The young man tried to recover, attempting a joke, a shrug, a quick comment, but the effect was gone. The momentum had shifted. The passengers, who had been on the fence about whose side they were on, now subtly leaned toward Seagal. The young man's bravado, once intoxicating, now seemed small, fragile, and oddly childish. And then, just as the bus hit a curve, the subtle but undeniable realization dawned on the arrogant passenger. He had underestimated someone who didn't need to react loudly, someone who wielded control not with fists, but with presence, confidence, and intelligence. In that instant, seconds after his attempt at humiliation, he felt the first pangs of regret, a chilling awareness that this encounter was not going the way he had imagined. Have you ever seen someone completely shut down arrogance with calm confidence? Comment below and tell me, what city or country are you watching this from? By now, the rest of the passengers were fully aware of the dynamic. A few exchanged looks, impressed with Seagal's restraint and composure. Others quietly nodded, realizing that sometimes the strongest response isn't physical. It's the quiet power of presence and poise. The arrogant passenger, still standing, slowly sank back into his seat, his face flushing with embarrassment. He glanced at Seagal, trying to read his expression, perhaps searching for a hint of mockery or amusement, but found none. Seagal simply returned to his relaxed posture, eyes forward, calm, collected, almost serene. The bus ride, which had started like any ordinary afternoon, had transformed into a masterclass in humility, authority, and instant lessons learned. And for the arrogant passenger, the realization was already settling in. Seconds ago, he had thought he had the upper hand. Now, in less than a minute, the lesson had been delivered, cleanly and definitively. The bus continued its journey through the bustling city streets, every turn, every stop adding layers of suspense to the already charged atmosphere. The arrogant passenger, who had been standing with a smirk moments ago, now sat back in his seat, but his pride had not recovered. A creeping sense of unease began to replace his earlier bravado. He couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in the energy around him. Seagal's calm composure had silently drawn the attention of every passenger. Seagal, as always, remained calm. His eyes, steady and unwavering, followed the passenger's every subtle movement, not out of malice, but out of quiet awareness. It was as if he could read the tension before it fully formed, anticipating the next move without breaking a sweat. There was no rush in his actions, no frantic gestures, only the aura of confidence that had earned him respect on countless movie sets, and now, on this ordinary city bus. The arrogant passenger, still attempting to regain control of the situation, decided to speak again. This time, his voice was tinged with uncertainty, his smirk fading slightly. I mean, come on, man. You're on a bus like the rest of us. Just relax, okay? He tried to sound casual, but the nervous twitch in his shoulder betrayed him. The passengers, sensing his unease, leaned slightly forward in their seats, their curiosity piqued, their phones subtly raised, ready to capture every second of this unfolding drama. Seagal responded, not with aggression, not with confrontation, but with quiet precision. Relaxation isn't the same as humility, he said, his voice calm, measured, and carrying an authority that immediately demanded attention. You confuse arrogance with confidence. Remember, every action has a consequence, and sometimes the smallest misjudgment can teach the biggest lesson. The bus seemed to hold its collective breath. Every word Seagal spoke, every slight movement he made, resonated through the small space. The arrogant passenger shifted uncomfortably, realizing that he was no longer the center of control. He had become part of a narrative he didn't understand he had entered. His confidence, once blindingly loud, now seemed fragile and transparent under Seagal's steady gaze. Around them, whispers and quiet murmurs circulated. Some passengers nodded subtly, others exchanged glances of admiration for the calm authority Seagal exuded. A sense of tension mixed with anticipation. The audience, both in the bus and for the viewers imagining this scene, knew something significant was about to happen. The arrogance that had initially fueled the young man's actions was now being dismantled, piece by piece, by a calm yet unshakable force. Seagal leaned slightly forward, not in threat, but in emphasis. "It's easy to think that showing disrespect gives you power. But true strength," he continued, "lies in patience, observation, and the ability to respond, not react. Seconds ago, you thought you had the upper hand. And now—" He paused, letting the words sink in. The arrogant passenger's face betrayed the first real signs of fear and understanding. He swallowed hard, realizing that his attempt to humiliate someone had backfired spectacularly. Every whisper from the other passengers, every subtle glance, reinforced the lesson. The moment arrogance meets calm mastery, it rarely ends well. If you were in this moment, would you react like the passenger or stay calm like Steven Seagal? Comment below. The tension on the bus was tangible. Every turn of the wheels, every jolt, every sigh of the engine felt magnified. The arrogant passenger tried to form a response, some witty remark to regain his pride, but the words died in his throat. He knew, deep down, that any reaction now would only confirm the lesson he was already learning: the instant consequences of underestimating someone who moves with quiet power. Seagal, meanwhile, returned to his relaxed position, his eyes forward, his demeanor unshakable. It was a masterclass in presence. The calm, deliberate contrast to the brash, impulsive energy of the young man made it clear who held the real authority in this room. The bus ride, which had started as an ordinary afternoon journey, had transformed into a lesson in humility, power, and respect. By the time the bus reached the next stop, the arrogant passenger had shifted multiple times in his seat, glancing nervously at Seagal, at the other passengers, and then back again, each movement a silent acknowledgment of his earlier misjudgment. The story unfolding on this bus was no longer about a casual ride. It was about a moment that would leave a lasting impression on everyone involved. The energy had completely shifted. Arrogance, once loud and flashy, had been quietly but effectively humbled. And Steven Seagal, with his calm authority, had already begun to teach a lesson that would resonate long after the bus pulled away from the stop. The bus rattled along the uneven city streets, every bump and sway echoing through the tense atmosphere. The arrogant passenger, who had spent the last several minutes trying to regain some semblance of control, finally began to feel the weight of his mistake. His smirk, once so confident, had completely vanished. Now, all that remained was a flicker of unease and an awareness that he had underestimated someone far more capable than he had imagined. Steven Seagal, meanwhile, remained perfectly composed. His gaze, steady and unyielding, met the young man's eyes with a quiet authority that needed no words. To the casual observer, it might have seemed like nothing was happening, but the subtle power dynamics were palpable. Every passenger on the bus could feel it, even if they didn't fully understand why. The shift had begun. The arrogant passenger attempted another quip, a desperate effort to reclaim his pride. I was just kidding, man. Chill out," he stammered, his voice cracking slightly. The words, however, fell flat. The bus had turned into a small theater, and the audience was fully tuned in. Phones were discreetly raised, capturing the unfolding tension, every subtle twitch and expression magnified on screen. Seagal tilted his head slightly, his expression calm but firm. He didn't laugh, he didn't shout, he didn't move aggressively. Instead, he spoke, his voice carrying a weight that demanded attention without forcing it. Kidding is only funny when everyone involved understands the line between confidence and arrogance. Seconds ago, you crossed that line. Now, it's time to understand the consequences. The young man froze mid-breath. His eyes widened as he realized the implication of the words. There would be no dramatic physical confrontation, no loud explosion of anger, just a lesson delivered with precision, calm, and unmistakable authority. The power of quiet presence was far more intimidating than any outburst could ever be. Around the bus, the tension was tangible. Passengers leaned forward subtly, their whispers hushed but full of awe. Some exchanged knowing glances, recognizing the magnitude of the lesson unfolding before them. A few couldn't help but smile, realizing that arrogance had just met its match. The passenger shifted uncomfortably in his seat, attempting to regain some composure. I didn't mean anything," he muttered, but even to his own ears, the words sounded hollow. Seagal's calm presence had already stripped away the bravado, exposing the vulnerability underneath. The arrogance that had once made him feel untouchable now seemed laughably fragile. Seagal leaned back slightly, his voice dropping just enough to create an intimate, almost personal resonance. "Power isn't loud. Strength isn't shown through disrespect. And arrogance is always temporary. Remember this moment, because it will stay with you longer than any insult you ever think you've delivered." The young man's face drained of color as the gravity of the lesson hit him. For the first time, he truly understood the mistake he had made in targeting someone so calm, confident, and skilled. Seconds before, he had thought the tables were in his favor. Now, the roles had completely reversed. Have you ever seen someone handle a tense situation with grace and authority? Comment below and tell me, would you have stayed calm like Steven Seagal or reacted like the passenger? The bus, which had been filled with casual chatter and background noise, was now silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional click of a phone camera. The passenger's attention was entirely on the unfolding confrontation, watching as the arrogant man's confidence crumbled quietly, like sand slipping through fingers. For the young man, every passing second was a reminder of how quickly arrogance can be dismantled. Seagal's calmness wasn't just a display of personal strength, it was a mirror reflecting the foolishness of overconfidence and disrespect. By remaining composed, Seagal had turned a potentially chaotic moment into a lesson that everyone on the bus could witness. As the bus approached the next stop, the passenger finally slumped into his seat, a mixture of embarrassment and realization evident on his face. The lesson was clear. In moments of confrontation, composure and intelligence far outweigh arrogance and impulsiveness. The stage had been set, the players had acted, and the outcome was undeniable. By the time the bus doors opened and new passengers stepped in, the arrogant man's ego had been effectively humbled, and Steven Seagal's quiet authority had commanded the respect of everyone present. What had started as a simple bus ride had transformed into a living lesson in humility, poise, and the undeniable power of calm confidence. The bus continued to glide through the city streets, each bump and turn echoing like a drumbeat in the heavy silence that had fallen over the vehicle. The young arrogant passenger, who only moments ago had been full of smug confidence, now sat rigidly in his seat. His earlier bravado had crumbled like a house of cards, and for the first time, he truly understood the mistake he had made. The look in Steven Seagal's calm, unwavering eyes was enough to make him feel smaller than he ever had before. Seagal didn't need to raise his voice or gesture aggressively. Every subtle movement, every slight tilt of his head, carried authority. It was quiet, controlled, and devastatingly effective. The bus passengers, now fully invested, watched intently, as if witnessing a masterclass in human psychology. The arrogance of the young man was being dismantled piece by piece, not through shouting, but through quiet presence and calm intelligence. The arrogant passenger attempted to speak, to salvage whatever pride remained. I didn't mean to," his voice trailed off, faltering under the weight of Seagal's silent dominance. He realized, painfully, that words alone could not undo the lesson he had already received. His gestures, once exaggerated and bold, now seemed childish, almost pathetic, in contrast to the steady confidence Seagal radiated. Seagal's voice, when he finally spoke, was low but clear, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "You see," he began slowly, making sure every word landed, "confidence is not arrogance. Respect is not demanded. It is earned. You thought you could humiliate me in seconds, but the reality is, arrogance is temporary, and lessons are unforgettable." The young man's eyes widened as the meaning hit him. Every passenger on the bus, some leaning forward slightly in their seats, others whispering quietly to each other, sensed the magnitude of what had just been said. Phones, previously raised to record casual moments, now captured the drama unfolding, the instant realization, the humiliation, and the subtle authority of a man who had faced far greater challenges in life. A few passengers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. Some quietly murmured their approval of Seagal's calm yet assertive demeanor, while others simply shook their heads, silently acknowledging how quickly arrogance could be dismantled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but the lesson was undeniable. The young passenger sank deeper into his seat, shoulders slumping as if the weight of his mistake had physically manifested. The flush of embarrassment spread across his face. Seconds earlier, he had believed himself in control, laughing at someone he thought would be an easy target. Now, in less than a minute, the tables had turned completely. Every attempted comeback, every smirk, every mocking glance had been neutralized. He understood, finally, that he had learned his lesson the hard way. Seagal leaned slightly forward, emphasizing his words. Humility is strength. Impulse is weakness. One moment of arrogance can undo everything you think you are. Remember this feeling, because it is the moment you realized respect cannot be faked. The young man's throat tightened. No words came. Any attempt to speak would be pointless. The lesson had been delivered not with aggression, but with a quiet authority that only someone who had mastered patience, skill, and awareness could wield. The bus, which moments ago had been a mundane vehicle carrying passengers through city streets, had now become a stage for a dramatic, unforgettable confrontation. Have you ever witnessed someone get an instant reality check? Comment below. Would you have reacted like the passenger, or stayed calm like Steven Seagal? The bus slowed to a stop, the engine humming softly. The young passenger avoided Seagal's gaze, staring at the floor, fully aware of his earlier mistake. The other passengers, some still holding their phones, shared knowing looks, quietly impressed by the power of calm authority. The lesson was clear: arrogance, when confronted with composure and intelligence, collapses almost immediately. For Steven Seagal, it was just another ordinary moment, handled with grace and precision. For the young passenger, it was unforgettable, a stark, immediate lesson in humility and respect. Seconds ago, he had tried to humiliate a legend. Now, he had been humiliated in the most effective way possible, silently, gracefully, and irrevocably. By the time the bus pulled away from the stop, the young man had absorbed the reality of the moment. The lesson wasn't just personal, it was public, witnessed by everyone around him, and captured in quiet, unassuming detail by the onlookers and cameras. And as the bus rolled onward, the transformation was complete. Arrogance humbled, confidence validated, and respect restored. The bus rolled steadily through the city streets, the tension from the confrontation still lingering like a heavy fog. The arrogant passenger sat slouched in his seat, staring blankly ahead, the humiliation he had felt moments ago still raw and undeniable. Every glance from fellow passengers seemed to underscore the lesson he had learned, the stark reality of being bested not by force, but by calm authority. Steven Seagal, meanwhile, remained the epitome of composure. His posture was relaxed, yet commanding, his expression neutral, yet conveying subtle power. To the casual observer, it might have looked like nothing had happened. But the energy inside the bus told a different story. Every subtle movement Seagal made reinforced the quiet dominance that had left the young man utterly humbled. Passengers whispered quietly to one another. Phones, previously raised for casual recordings, were now focused, capturing not just the confrontation, but the shift in dynamics, the instant where arrogance met measured strength. One passenger, unable to contain their excitement, whispered to the person next to them, "Did you see that? He didn't even yell or hit him, and the guy is completely embarrassed." The young man's eyes darted around nervously, realizing that his failed attempt to humiliate someone had become a public lesson. He had thought he could assert dominance, make a joke, maybe even gain attention. Instead, he had become the focal point of silent scrutiny, a cautionary example for everyone on the bus. Seagal, noticing the shift, spoke quietly but with precision, ensuring his words reached the passenger. Sometimes, the fastest way to teach a lesson isn't confrontation. It's calmness, awareness, and letting someone face their own choices. Seconds ago, you made a decision. Now, the consequences are clear. The young man's shoulders slumped even further. He wanted to respond, to argue, to regain his pride, but any attempt would have only reinforced the lesson. He had already learned it in full, publicly, and irrevocably. The realization that arrogance can collapse in moments under quiet strength was now cemented in his mind. Have you ever witnessed someone get an instant reality check in public? Comment below. Would you have stayed calm like Steven Seagal or reacted like the passenger? Meanwhile, the rest of the passengers were visibly impressed. Some whispered words of admiration for Seagal's demeanor. Others quietly nodded in respect, recognizing the subtle power of patience and control. A few, unable to resist, quietly recorded snippets of the incident, knowing that this was more than just a personal lesson, it was a story worth sharing. As the bus approached a major intersection, the scene began to gain attention beyond the vehicle. Pedestrians on the street noticed the tense atmosphere and the subtle gestures between Seagal and the young man. Whispers spread quickly, and within moments, the incident began to circulate through nearby social media circles. Clips from passengers' phones started being uploaded, capturing the moment when arrogance had met calm authority. The young man, now fully aware of how publicly his embarrassment had been displayed, buried his face in his hands. The lesson had transcended the physical space of the bus. It was now viral, immortalized in countless videos and shared across platforms. Seconds ago, he had been confident and brash. Now, he had become a cautionary tale of what happens when impulsive arrogance meets composed mastery. Steven Seagal remained unbothered, his calm demeanor unchanged. For him, the lesson was simple. Sometimes the most effective way to handle arrogance is not with anger or retaliation, but with presence, wit, and quiet authority. The passenger had learned his lesson in seconds, and the witnesses had all absorbed a powerful reminder about humility and respect. By the time the bus reached the final stop, the arrogant man had sunk into his seat, silent and introspective. Passengers got off one by one, sharing looks and whispers, clearly impressed by what they had just witnessed. The story of the bus ride was already spreading, and it was only a matter of hours before the incident became a viral sensation. The moment had transformed from a personal confrontation into a public lesson, demonstrating that quick wit, calmness, and confidence can command respect and turn situations around instantly. Arrogance, no matter how loud, cannot withstand the quiet power of experience and composure. And for the young man, that lesson would remain unforgettable, etched clearly into his memory for years to come. By the time the bus pulled into the final stop, the once confident young passenger had been reduced to a shell of his former arrogance. His head hung low, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes avoided the piercing calm of Steven Seagal, who sat composed, almost serene. The lesson had been delivered, not with a loud argument, a physical altercation, or an over-the-top display, but with the quiet, undeniable force of presence, patience, and intelligence. As the passengers stepped off the bus, whispers of admiration followed Seagal like a subtle echo. Phones clicked and recorded, capturing every micro-expression, every pause, every calculated glance. Within minutes, snippets of the confrontation had been uploaded online. The viral wheels began turning. Clips of the arrogant passenger's humiliation, contrasted with Seagal's calm mastery, spread across social media platforms like wildfire. Comments and shares exploded, millions tuning in to witness the story of the bus ride that turned into an unforgettable lesson. "You can literally see him regretting it in real time," one viewer typed. "This is why you never underestimate calmness," commented another. "Steven Seagal is a master of handling disrespect without even raising his voice," read yet another reaction. The narrative was clear and powerful. Arrogance, when faced with composure and skill, crumbles almost instantly. And the best part? The lesson was witnessed by everyone, recorded for eternity, and shared in real time. The young passenger's embarrassment became a universal example, a reminder that respect cannot be demanded, only earned, and arrogance can be exposed in seconds when met with quiet authority. Meanwhile, the young man himself was painfully aware that the entire incident had gone viral. He scrolled through the comments on his phone, seeing strangers from all over the world reacting to the same moments he had lived through. His initial attempts at mockery had backfired spectacularly. Every laugh, every sympathetic nod from the passengers, every clip online was a testament to the lesson he had just learned. Seconds ago, he had thought himself clever. Now, the weight of regret pressed on him like a physical force. Seagal, ever composed, finally stood and exited the bus with the same calm dignity that had defined his presence throughout the ordeal. Fans waiting nearby recognized him instantly and applauded quietly, not just for his celebrity status, but for the quiet mastery with which he had handled a potentially humiliating situation. The young passenger watched, humbled, knowing that he had just experienced something far bigger than a simple confrontation. It was a demonstration of how calm authority can command respect in a world that often rewards brashness. If you believe humility, patience, and quick thinking always win over arrogance, type respect in the comments. Share this video with friends who need a reminder that composure beats impulsiveness, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories of instant lessons, legendary comebacks, and unforgettable moments.